I have done 30 plus certifications and am here to guide you throughout your certification journey. In this video, we will be covering some important questions of the Microsoft AZ-305 exam. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. To the important questions, question 1. You have an Azure subscription. The subscription has a blob container that contains multiple blobs, and users in the finance department of your company plan to access the blobs during the month of April. You need to recommend a solution to enable access to the blobs during the month of April only. Which security solution should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a solution to enable access to the blobs during the month of April only. As such, the security solution that we should include in the recommendation is shared access signature. Thus, the correct option is A. Shared access signatures allows for limited time fine-grained access control to resources. So you can generate a URL, specify duration, and disseminate URL to 10 team members. On Maven, the SAS token is automatically invalidated, denying team members continued access. Question 2. You are designing a large Azure environment that will contain many subscriptions. You plan to use Azure policy as part of a governance solution. To which three scopes can you assign Azure policy definitions? Here in this question, we are planning to use Azure policy as part of a governance solution. As such, the three scopes to which we can assign Azure policy definitions are subscriptions, resource groups, and management groups. Thus, the correct options are C, E, and F. Azure policy evaluates resources in Azure by comparing the properties of those resources to business rules. Once your business rule has been formed, the policy definition or initiative is assigned to any scope of resources that Azure supports, such as management groups, subscriptions, resource groups, or individual resources. Question 3. You need to recommend a solution to generate a monthly report of all the new Azure Resource Manager resource deployments in your Azure subscription. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a solution to generate a monthly report of all the new Azure Resource Manager resource deployments in our Azure subscription. As such, we will include Azure Activity Log in the recommendation. Thus, the correct option is A. Activity logs are kept for 90 days. You can query for any range of dates as long as the starting date isn't more than 90 days in the past. Through activity logs, we can determine the following. Question 4. You plan to deploy an Azure SQL database that will store personally identifiable information. You need to ensure that only privileged users can view the PII. What should you include in the solution? Here in this question, our main requirement is to ensure that only privileged users can view the PII. As such, we will include dynamic data masking. Thus, the correct option is A. Dynamic data masking limits sensitive data exposure by masking it to non-privileged users. Dynamic data masking helps prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data by enabling customers to designate how much of the sensitive data to reveal with minimal impact on the application layer. It is a policy based security feature that hides the sensitive data in the result set of a query over designated database fields while the data in the database is not changed. Question 5. You plan to deploy an app that will use an Azure storage account. You need to deploy the storage account. The storage account must meet the following requirements: store the data for multiple users, encrypt each user's data by using a separate key, encrypt all the data in the storage account by using customer managed keys. What should you deploy? Here in this question, we need to deploy the storage account while meeting the given requirements. As such, we should deploy blobs in a general purpose V2 storage account. Thus, the correct option is B. You can specify a customer provided key on blob storage operations. Client making a read or write request against blob storage can include an encryption key on the request for granular control over how blob data is encrypted and decrypted. Question 6. You have an application that is used by 6,000 users to validate their vacation request. The application manages its own credential store. Users must enter a username and password to access the application. The application does not support identity providers. You plan to upgrade the application to use single sign on authentication by using an Azure AD application registration. Which SSO method should you use? Here in this question, based on the given scenario, the SSO method that we should use is password based. Thus, the correct option is C. Password. On-premises applications can use a password-based method for SSO. This choice works when applications are configured for application proxy. With password-based SSO, users sign into the application with a username and password the first time they access it. After the first sign-on, Azure AD provides the username and password to the application. Password-based SSO enables secure application password storage and replay using a web browser extension or mobile app. This option uses the existing sign-in process provided by the application, enables an administrator to manage the passwords, and doesn't require the user to know the password. Question 7. You are designing an Azure governance solution. All Azure resources must be easily identifiable based on the following operational information: environment, owner, department, and cost center. You need to ensure that you can use the operational information when you generate reports for the Azure resources. What should you include in the solution? Here in this question, we need to ensure that we can use the operational information when we generate reports for the Azure resources. As such, we should include an Azure policy that enforces tagging rules. Thus, the correct option is C. You apply tags to your Azure resources, resource groups, and subscriptions to logically organize them into a taxonomy. Each tag consists of a name and a value pair. You use Azure policy to enforce tagging rules and conventions. By creating a policy, you avoid the scenario of resources being deployed to your subscription that don't have the expected tags for your organization. Instead of manually applying tags or searching for resources that aren't compliant, you create a policy that automatically applies the needed tags during deployment. Question 8. You are developing an app that will read activity logs for an Azure subscription by using Azure functions. You need to recommend an authentication solution for Azure functions. The solution must minimize administrative effort. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend an authentication solution for Azure functions while minimizing administrative effort. As such, we should include system-assigned managed identities. Thus, the correct option is B. System-assigned managed identities reduce administrative efforts. B makes more sense. Question 9. You have an Azure subscription that contains 1000 resources. You need to generate compliance reports for the subscription. The solution must ensure that the resources can be grouped by department. What should you use to organize the resources? Here in this question, we need to ensure that the resources can be grouped by department. As such, in order to organize the resources, we should use Azure policy and tags. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 10. You have an Azure subscription. You plan to deploy a monitoring solution that will include the following: Azure Monitor Network Insights, Application Insights, Microsoft Sentinel, VM Insights. The monitoring solution will be managed by a single team. What is the minimum number of Azure Monitor workspaces required? Here in this question, we plan to deploy a monitoring solution that will include the given, and the monitoring solution will be managed by a single team. As such, the minimum number of Azure Monitor workspaces required is 1. Thus, the correct option is A. You only need a single Azure Monitor Log Analytics workspace for all these monitoring solutions. Here is why. Azure Monitor Network Insights, Application Insights, Microsoft Sentinel, and VM Insights, all of these components can send their data to Log Analytics workspace. The workspace is a unique environment for Azure Monitor log data. Each workspace has its own data repository and configuration, and data sources and your solutions are configured to store their data in a workspace. Therefore, a single Azure Monitor Log Analytics workspace can be utilized to collect and analyze data from all the components of the monitoring solution. This will also enable a unified management and analysis of the collected data. Question 11. You have an Azure subscription. The subscription contains a tiered app named App 1 that is distributed across multiple containers hosted in Azure Container Instances. You need to deploy an Azure Monitor monitoring solution for app. The solution must meet the following requirements: support using synthetic transaction monitoring to monitor traffic between the App 1 components, minimize development effort. What should you include in the solution? Here in this question, we need to deploy an Azure Monitor monitoring solution for app that meets the following requirements. As such, we should include application insights in the solution. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 12. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure blob storage account named Store 1. You have an on-premises file server named Server 1 that runs Windows Server 2016. Server 1 stores 500 GB of company files. You need to store a copy of the company files from Server 1 in Store 1. Which two possible Azure services achieve this goal? Here in this question, we need to store a copy of the company files from Server 1 in Store 1. As such, the two possible Azure services that achieve this goal are an Azure import/export job and Azure Data Factory. Thus, the correct options are B and C. About the options, B. You can use the Azure import/export service to securely export large amounts of data from Azure Blob Storage. The service requires you to ship empty drives to the Azure data center. The service exports data from your storage account to the drives and then ships the drive back. About option C, big data requires a service that can orchestrate and operationalize processes to refine these enormous stores of raw data into actionable business insights. Azure Data Factory is a managed cloud service that is built for these complex hybrid extract load transform, and data integration projects. Question 13. You are designing an application that will be hosted in Azure. The application will host video files that range from 50 MB to 12 GB. The application will use certificate-based authentication and will be available to users on the internet. You need to recommend a storage option for the video files. The solution must provide the fastest read performance and must minimize storage costs. What should you recommend? Here in this question, the solution must provide the fastest read performance and must minimize storage costs. As such, we should recommend Azure Blob Storage. Thus, the correct option is C. Blob storage. It stores large amounts of unstructured data, such as text or binary data, that can be accessed from anywhere in the world via HTTP or HTTPS. You can use blob storage to expose data publicly to the world or to store application data privately. Max file in blob storage is of 4.77 TB. Question 14. You are designing a SQL database solution. The solution will include 20 databases that will be 20 GB each and have varying usage patterns. You need to recommend a database platform to host the databases. The solution must meet the following requirements. The solution must meet a SLA of 99.99% of time. The compute resources allocated to the database must scale dynamically. The solution must have reserved capacity. Compute charges must be minimized. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a database platform to host the databases while meeting the given requirements. Based on this, we should include an elastic pool that contains 20 Azure SQL databases in the recommendation. Thus, the correct option is A. The compute and storage redundancy is built in for business critical databases and elastic pools with a SLA of 99.99%. Reserved capacity provides you with the flexibility to appropriately move your shared databases in and out of elastic pools as part of your normal operations without losing the reserved capacity benefit. Question 15. You are planning an Azure IoT Hub solution that will include 50,000 IoT devices. Each device will stream data, including temperature, device ID, and time data. Approximately 50,000 records will be written every second. The data will be visualized in near real time. You need to recommend a service to store and query the data. Which two services can you recommend? Here in this question, we need to recommend a service to store and query the data. As such, the two services that we can recommend are Azure Cosmos DB SQL API and Azure Time Series Insights. Thus, the correct options are C and D. About the options, D. Time Series Insights is a fully managed service for time series data. In this architecture, Time Series Insights performs the roles of stream processing, data store, and analytics and reporting. It accepts streaming data from either IoT Hub or Event Hubs and stores, processes, analyzes, and displays the data in near real time. About option C, The processed data is stored in an analytical data store such as Azure Data Explorer, HBase, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Data Lake, or Blob Storage. Question 16. You are designing an application that will aggregate content for users. You need to recommend a database solution for the application. The solution must meet the following requirements: support SQL commands, support multi-master writes, guarantee low latency read operations. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a database solution for the application while meeting the given requirements. As such, we should include Azure Cosmos DB SQL API in the recommendation. Thus, the correct option is A. With Cosmos DB's novel multi-region writes application protocol, every region supports both writes and reads. The multi-region writes capabilities also enables unlimited elastic write and read scalability, 99.999% read and write availability all around the world, guaranteed reads and writes served in less than 10 milliseconds at 99th percentile. Question 17. You store web access log data in Azure Blob Storage. You plan to generate monthly reports from the access logs. You need to recommend an automated process to upload the data to Azure SQL database every month. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend an automated process to upload the data to Azure SQL database every month. As such, based on the scenario, we should include Azure Data Factory. Thus, the correct option is D. You can create data factory pipelines that copies data from Azure Blob Storage to Azure SQL database. The configuration pattern applies to copying from a file-based data store to a relational data store. The required steps are given below. Question 18. You have an app named App1 that uses two on-premises Microsoft SQL Server databases named DB1 and DB2. You plan to migrate DB1 and DB2 to Azure. You need to recommend an Azure solution to host DB1 and DB2. The solution must meet the following requirements: support server-side transactions across DB1 and DB2, minimize administrative effort to update the solution. What should you recommend? Here in this question, we need to recommend an Azure solution to host DB1 and DB2 while meeting the given requirements. As such, we should recommend two databases on the same Azure SQL managed instance. Thus, the correct option is B. Elastic database transactions for Azure SQL database and Azure SQL managed instance allow you to run transactions that span several databases. SQL managed instance enables system administrators to spend less time on administrative tasks because the service either performs them for you or greatly simplifies those tasks. Question 19. You need to design a highly available Azure SQL database that meets the following requirements. Failover between replicas of the database must occur without any data loss. The database must remain available in the event of a zone outage. Costs must be minimized. Which deployment option should you use? Here in this question, we need to design a highly available Azure SQL database that meets the given requirements. As such, the deployment option that we should use is Azure SQL Database Premium. Thus, the correct option is B. Azure SQL Database Premium tier supports multiple redundant replicas for each database that are automatically provisioned in the same data center within a region. This design leverages the SQL Server always on technology and provides resilience to server failures with 99.99% availability SLA and RPO equals 0. With the introduction of Azure Availability Zones, we are happy to announce that SQL database now offers built-in support of availability zones in its premium service tier. Question 20. You have an app named App 1 that uses an on-premises Microsoft SQL Server database named DB1. You plan to migrate DB1 to an Azure SQL managed instance. You need to enable customer managed transparent data encryption for the instance. The solution must maximize encryption strength. Which type of encryption algorithm and key length should you use for the TDE protector? Here in this question, based on the given requirements, the type of encryption algorithm and key length that we should use is RSA 3072. Thus, the correct option is A. Requirements for configuring TDE protector. TDE protector can only be an asymmetric RSA or RSA HSM key. The supported key lengths are 2048 bytes and 3072 bytes. The key activation date, if set, must be a date and time in the past. Question 21. You have an on-premises storage solution. You need to migrate the solution to Azure. The solution must support Hadoop distributed file system. What should you use? Here in this question, we need to migrate the solution to Azure and it must support HDFS. As such, we should use Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Thus, the correct option is A. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. This is a fully managed cloud native data lake that supports the HDFS protocol. It allows you to store and analyze large amounts of data in its native format without the need to move or transform the data. Question 22. You plan to migrate on-premises MySQL databases to Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server. You need to recommend a solution for the Azure Database for MySQL Flexible Server configuration. The solution must meet the following requirements. The databases must be accessible if a data center fails. Costs must be minimized. Which compute tier should you recommend? Here in this question, we need to recommend a solution for the Azure database for MySQL flexible server configuration that meets the given requirements. As such, the compute tier that we should recommend based on the given scenario is general purpose. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 23. You are designing an app that will use Azure Cosmos DB to collate scales from multiple countries. You need to recommend an API for the app. The solution must meet the following requirements: support SQL queries, support geo-replication, store and access data relationally. Which API should you recommend? Here in this question, we need to recommend an API for the app that must meet the given requirements. As such, the API that we should recommend is PostgreSQL. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 24. You plan to use an Azure storage account to store datasets. You need to recommend a solution that meets the following requirements: supports immutable storage, disables anonymous access to the storage account, supports ACL based Azure AD permissions. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a solution that meets the given requirements. Based on the given scenario, we should include Azure Blob Storage. Thus, the correct option is D. The Azure service that meets all your requirements is Azure Blob Storage. It supports immutable storage, which allows you to store business critical data in warm state 1. By default, anonymous access to your data is never permitted in Azure Blob Storage unless you explicitly enable anonymous access. All requests to a container and its blob must be authorized. Starting from August 2023, Azure Storage will begin phased rollout of changes that disables anonymous access for all new storage accounts by default. Azure Blob Storage also supports ACL-based Azure AD permissions. So the correct answer is D, Azure Blob Storage. Question 25. You have an app named App1 that uses an Azure Blob Storage container named App1 Data. App1 uploads a cumulative transaction log file named file1.txt to a blob in App1 data once every hour. File1.txt only stores transaction data from the current day. You need to ensure that you can restore the last uploaded version of file1.txt from any day for up to 30 days after the file was overwritten. The solution must minimize storage space. What should you include in the solution? Here in this question, we need to ensure that we can restore the last uploaded version of file1.txt from any day for up to 30 days after the file was overwritten while minimizing storage space. As such, we should include blob versioning in the solution. Thus, the correct option is D. The key here is that file1.txt is changed every hour. Theoretically, you can do this with B as well, but you need to configure a given time when the snapshot is taken. With blob versioning, you have access to 24 versions, and you can restore, for example, a version that took place 6 hours ago as opposed to when the blob snapshot took place. Question 26. You have SQL Server on an Azure virtual machine. The databases are written to nightly as part of a batch process. You need to recommend a disaster recovery solution for the data. The solution must meet the following requirements: provide the ability to recover in the event of a regional outage, support a recovery time objective of 15 minutes, support a recovery point objective of 24 hours, support automated recovery, minimize costs. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a disaster recovery solution that meets the given requirements. As such, we should include Azure Site Recovery in the recommendations. Thus, the correct option is D. Replication with Azure Site Recovery. RTO is typically less than 15 minutes, RPO 1 hour for application consistency, and 5 minutes for crash consistency. Question 27. You plan to deploy 10 applications to Azure. The applications will be deployed to two Azure Kubernetes service clusters. Each cluster will be deployed to a separate Azure region. The application deployment must meet the following requirements. Ensure that the applications remain available if a single AKS cluster fails. Ensure that the connection traffic over the internet is encrypted by using SSL without having to configure SSL on each container. Which service should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we are planning to deploy 10 applications to Azure that will be deployed to two Azure Kubernetes service clusters. Each cluster will be deployed to a separate Azure region, and the application deployment must meet the given requirements. As such, the service that we should include in the recommendation is Azure Front Door. As such, based on the given requirements, the service that we should include in the recommendation is Azure Front Door. Thus, the correct option is A. Front is an application delivery network that provides global load balancing and site acceleration service for web applications. It offers layer 7 capabilities for your application like SSL offload, path-based routing, fast failover, caching, etc. to improve performance and high availability of your applications. Question 28. You plan to deploy an Azure database for MySQL flexible server named Server 1 to the East US Azure region. You need to implement a business continuity solution for Server 1. The solution must minimize downtime in the event of a failover to a paired region. What should you do? Here in this question, we need to implement a business continuity solution for server 1 that must minimize downtime in the event of a failover to a paired region. As such, we should implement DO redundant backup. Thus, the correct option is C. Question 29. You have an on-premises network and an Azure subscription. The on-premises network has several branch offices. Branch office in Toronto contains a virtual machine named VM1 that is configured as a file server. Users access the shared files on VM1 from all the offices. You need to recommend a solution to ensure that the users can access the shared files as quickly as possible if the Toronto branch office is inaccessible. What should you include in the recommendation? Here in this question, we need to recommend a solution to ensure that users can access the shared files as quickly as possible if the Toronto branch office is inaccessible. As such, we will include an Azure file share and Azure file sync. Thus, the correct option is D. Use Azure File Sync to centralize your organization's file shares in Azure files while keeping the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of an on-premises file server. Azure File Sync transforms Windows Server into a quick cache of your Azure file share. Question 30. You are designing a microservices architecture that will be hosted in an Azure Kubernetes service cluster. Apps that will consume the microservices will be hosted on Azure virtual machines. The virtual machines and the AKS cluster will reside on the same virtual network. You need to design a solution to expose the microservices to the consumer apps. The solution must meet the following requirements. Ingress access to the microservices must be restricted to a single private IP address and protected by using mutual TLS authentication. The number of incoming microservices calls must be rate limited. Costs must be minimized. What should you include in the solution? Here in this question, we need to design a solution to expose the microservices to the consumer apps while meeting the given requirements. As such, we will include Azure API Management Premium tier with virtual network connection. Thus, the correct option is D. One option is to deploy APIM inside the cluster VNet. The AKS cluster and the applications that consume the microservices might reside within the same VNet, hence there is no reason to expose the cluster publicly as all API traffic will remain within the VNet. For these scenarios, you can deploy API management into the cluster VNet. API management premium tier supports VNet deployment. These were all the questions for this video. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. We will be publishing more parts to this series in the future, so please make sure to subscribe our channel and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.